Evening, everyone.
Kavod Tarav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay, so we're going to continue from yesterday. So yesterday we did Aleph. So we'll go on to Bet. So, yeah, this one is not in the Bet Yosef for some reason. But anyway, right, what is it talking about here? It says, לא ישתה אדם בכוס זה וייתן עיניו בכוס אחר, ואפילו שתיהן נשב, right? So the idea here is like this, right? He's using here a euphemism to explain something, right? Which is that when you're having relations with your wife, so don't think about some other woman. You should be thinking about only her. Well, you may think, what does it hurt? Just a fantasy or whatever, right? Whatever. I'm just having a good time in my mind. But the problem is that this causes like the child to be damaged, spiritually because of this bad right connection mentally between the husband and wife. Not a straight connection there. So therefore, it causes damage. So therefore, we don't want this, right? And we try to, I tell people to stay away from this kind of thing. It just brings to my mind right now, something really powerful that I saw in the book Kafachaim. So this story, right, teaches you about the severity of these problems regarding the issue of being with one and thinking about another. So it says over there something interesting, right? It's really, kind of shocking too. It says there that there was a man, who if there who was happened to be outside somewhere, and he sees a non-Jewish girl, and he starts, kind of like checking her out, looking at her, and he's not supposed to be doing that, whatever. I mean, so obviously shouldn't be doing that. So what happens is, right, that the non-Jewish woman notices this, she gets it. I mean, she understands what's going on. That this guy likes her, has some kind of a fondness for her. That's why he's checking her out. So because of that, what happens is, right, that she also develops some kind of a fondness for him as well. So this forms a mental connection, even though they didn't have, they didn't speak to each other. There was no rendezvous there, right? Physically, even verbally, nothing there. So what happened was, right, now this guy goes home, and he has relations with his wife that night, whatever. Problem is, he's thinking about that lady, that non-Jewish lady he saw on the street. You know what I mean? So now what's the story with that? The story is that because he was thinking about her, and also right now this non-Jewish woman, she, now there's the other side, the flip side, right, of this whole thing. This non-Jewish woman, has a boyfriend, right? And she has relations with her boyfriend. So what happens is, right, that so in other words, they're having sexual relations, each one with their partner. But the problem is, they're not thinking about their partner, they're thinking about each other. Because, of that little, right, connection that they had in the street there. So, it says the Kaf HaChaim, what happens in a case like this? Okay? So what happens is like this, that this is a true story, actually, they say, right? What happens is that because that woman, right, non-Jewish, is thinking about him, this guy, and he's thinking about her, so now what happens is that they switch, there's a switch that goes on here. What do I mean by switch? That, this Jewish guy is supposed to be having Jewish children with his wife. And this lady, right, is supposed to be having non-Jewish children with her partner, whatever it is, right? But because they're thinking about each other, it gets switched. So what does that mean? The non-Jewish soul gets sent to the Jewish partners, right? Because he's thinking about her. And the Jewish soul gets sent to this lady, with her boyfriend, non-Jewish lady. So what happens is, right, the Jewish one is born, right, in the non-Jewish family, and the non-Jewish one is born in the Jewish family. So now, right, well, what happens now, right? What are the consequences of this? So the consequences are, listen to this now, right? This non-Jew, right, who was born into a Jewish family, the problem is his soul is not Jewish, so he's not interested in Judaism, you know what I mean? So what happens is, right, that this guy now, eventually leaves Judaism and he becomes a Christian, becomes a apostate, right? Whatever you want to call it, right? And just the opposite, right? With this non-Jewish lady, the Jewish soul comes over there, and this guy, right, grows up with her, with her non-Jewish mother, and guess what, right? He converts to Judaism, becomes a Jew. Why is that? Because he's a Jewish soul. So what do you see from there, right? This is the power of thought. The thought can divert, when it comes to, relations and birth, and bearing children, the thoughts can divert the situation altogether, 180 degrees around. It's incredible. You get my point there?
Yes.
I hope I described it clearly.
So because of the thought, there was an action, and the action created these kids to be born. The
Right.
spiritual bond in
They got
different.
switched, basically, right? They switched.
Mhm.
Can you imagine such? So you see, right? That thought has an incredible power when it comes to having children.
So if the person that wasn't Jew by mother comes with this Jewish soul, do they
Right.
come with the spark, with the Jewish spark?
So he converts to Judaism. That's what happens. So he converts because he's
okay,
a Jew.
interesting.
So whose fault is this? It's the father, right? Who was checking out this right shiksa, this non-Jewish girl. It all came from that. So you see, right, the thought. And that's why we warn you, this halakha, when you're having relations with one woman, right, your wife, don't be thinking about somebody else. Otherwise, you're going to make a big problem, for your, right, the quality of the child is going to be totally affected here, right? There's going to be a defect. And here's the thing, right? Since we're on this topic, let's get into a little bit deeper, okay? You ready for this? So let's talk about now the story of the biblical stories, right? Of Reuven and David HaMelech, right? King David. So as you know, Reuven was the son of Yaakov, right? The firstborn. And King David was the son of Ishai, right? Who was a big tzaddik, this guy. They say, this person, Ishai, he died without sin. He never sinned in his life. So we're talking about somebody, humongous, right? Okay, so here we go, right? So says the Zohar Kadosh, right? What happened with Yaakov, right? And he wanted to marry Rachel, right? But Lavan switched in and gave her Leah instead. You guys know the story, right? Everybody knows the story. Right? So what happened was that when Yaakov was living that night, right, with Leah, he thought it was Rachel. It was a mistake. Who caused this? Lavan, right? The father-in-law, he was a big Rasha, So he made it switch like this. And by the way, they say, the Chazal, he did it on purpose, because he knew this would damage the child. He wanted to damage the children. So they shouldn't be so holy, He didn't want that. So he pulled a fast one like this, especially to damage the children. This was his intention. So what happened was like this, right? That Yaakov was thinking about Rachel, but he was living with Leah. So that night, right, Leah got pregnant, right? Who was a child? Reuven, right? He was the first child. So they say, right, that what? Chazal, it says in the Torah that Reuven sinned, right? Whatever the sin that he did, whatever it was, this whole discussion about that, but I'm not going to get into that now. It's a side issue, right? But he sinned. He did teshuvah. He repented. So what happened was that, right? What caused that damage to Reuven? That he sinned? Because Yaakov was thinking about Rachel and he was really with Leah. This would cause him to come out, damaged spiritually. That's why he sinned. So, but here's the thing, right? Here's the clincher. Here's the catch, right? The Zohar Kadosh is very deep, It says about deep things. Sometimes people ask me, they say, a lot of people ask you this question. Probably some of you have also asked me this question. They ask me, like, since your rabbi passed away, Maran, who's your rabbi now? So, what I tell them? I said, now I have a good answer for them. You know what I tell them? I said, I tell them, now my rabbi is Rabbi Shimon. What does that mean? Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, right? The one who, the author of the Zohar, right? More or less, right? So why do I tell them that? Because now I learned Zohar, and after Rabbi passed away, I started learning Zohar. So now, right, I learned so much from that book. Now Rabbi Shimon is my rabbi. So it's pretty much the what can I tell you, right? That's the way it goes. So anyway, right? Here's the thing. Says the Zohar Kadosh.
As long as it's not Shimon Peres.
Oh, Shimon Peres. Oh, our good friend, right? Our good buddy. Oh, you brought him into the picture. One time, you should know, by the way, here's the thing. Since you mentioned this guy's name, okay? You should know that, he was totally secular, this guy. Most of his life. Most of his life.
Yeah.
And you know what happened in the end? Listen to
Wait a second. He's not the one that was assassinated.
No, he was the Rabin was assassinated.
Okay.
So anyway, Shimon, listen to this. He was secular all his life, and then one day, he came to visit Maran, my rabbi, So guess what Maran did? He brought him back to Teshuvah. Shimon Peres. He made him to do Teshuvah. When Shimon Peres passed away, when he died, he was Shomer Shabbat. You understand what I'm saying?
All right, so I have some hope.
Okay, why do I tell you this? Because, it's interesting, right? I'll tell you something interesting. One time, they asked Shimon Peres. They said, where are you going? Shimon, where are you going? So he told them, he says, yeah, I'm going to see my rabbi. He said, what? You have a rabbi? You're totally secular. So he says, yeah, I'm going to see Rav Vadia. He says, that's my Rebbe. So the rabbi brought him to do teshuvah, and Shimon Peres considered to be his Rebbe. Did you know about that? Okay, whatever.
No,
right? It's interesting.
I didn't. I had no idea.
By the way, also his wife Sonia. His name was Sonia. Sonia Perez. She also did teshuvah. She became religious. When she passed away, she was Shomer Shabbat. Anyway, getting back to our discussion, right? That's a side point. So, right, so what happened was, right, that it says in the Zohar Kadosh, here's the thing, right? As we said, there was damage to Reuven. Why? Because he was thinking about Rachel, but he was physically with Leah. So, but it says in the Zohar Kadosh, the damage was not so severe. Why is that? The truth is, right, in a situation like that, the damage should be very severe. Meaning to say that the child is considered to be like, he's going to become like a total loser, totally off the way, off the derech. So, but Reuven, he did teshuvah, he didn't go off the derech all the way. So they say, right, why is that? The reason is because even though Yaakov was thinking about Leah, but it was by mistake. He wasn't doing it on purpose. He thought he was thinking about Rachel. I'm sorry. It wasn't on purpose. He thought it was Rachel. So since it was not on purpose that he did that, so therefore the damage was not so great. That's the story. Now, here's the thing. But what happened was, right, something incredible. In the end, Reuven lost his firstborn status, and it was given to Yosef. If you guys don't know about the story, right, look in the commentaries on the Bible. You'll find all these things, right? Look in the commentaries there. Rashi, right, all the others. So it was given to Yosef. And what happened was, right, they say, now, since Yaakov was thinking about Rachel when he was with Leah and he gave birth to Reuven, that's why the firstborn went to Yosef. Why? Because really, right, he was supposed to be giving birth to Yosef, bearing Yosef at that time. So therefore, it went back to him. So that's an incredibly deep thing to say, I mean, that's, if you think about what's going on there, quite deep. Okay, but let's go further a little bit. Now we go to the story of King David, right? David HaMelech. So what's the story over there, right? You guys know about the story? What happened there? How was he born, right? How did he come into the world, David? So they say, right, the story goes like this. As we said, his father, Ishai, was a big tzaddik, So what happened was, this guy, Ishai, he got this brainstorm in his head, There's a midrash that talks about this. So what is a brainstorm? He says, you know what? I'm going to go, celibate, and stop having relations with my wife. Why? Because I want to, become holy, I want to stop having sex. No more sex for me. It's too physical, I want to become like an angel. No more sex. Okay? So who was he trying to emulate? Right? He was trying to emulate Moshe Rabbeinu, that's separated from his wife, as we know, right? That was his goal. So here's the problem, though, right? He wasn't on that level, like Moshe Rabbeinu. He wasn't a prophet like that on that level. So therefore, he had no reason to do that. So therefore, what happened was that this brainstorm that he got, guess what? It backfired on him, That's what happens when you try to go too high for yourself, You're not on that level. You try to go somewhere where you don't belong. So what happened was, right, he stopped having sex with his wife. He went celibate, Okay, good. Now, here we go. So now the problem is, right, Ishai has a maidservant, right? That, she's the maid of the house, she does the housework, right? He's a noble man, they have, servants, right? They don't do all the physical work themselves. Noble man, right? So what happens is, all of a sudden, right, Ishai takes a look at this maidservant, right, of his, starts to get attracted to her, Oh, gee, wow, she's a nice looking lady there, right? Ooh, wow. I'd like to try her out, let's see if we can try that. So what does he do? Right? He convinces her, propositions her, to have a fling with him. So obviously, right, a person like Ishai, he's not going to do something illegal, right? He's not going to do something against halakha. So what did he propose to her, right? You guys know, right? If you, right, you probably can guess if you learn about these laws a little bit, right? So he probably told her, be my pilegesh, right? So he didn't want to marry her, so I want to take her as a pilegesh, something like that, right? Whatever it was. So anyway, right? So she tells him, okay, I'll do it. But this lady, was a special lady. She must have been very clever, this lady, So what happens is like this, right? That she goes to his wife, Ishai's wife, tells her, he says, excuse me, right? Madame, right? Madame, right, of Ishai, yeah. He says, you know what? I don't want to tell you, but your husband just propositioned me. So then she understood, right? I guess she told him whatever, that he went celibate with his wife, So she tells him like this. He says, listen, he says, if he went celibate with you, so he says, I'm going to give you an offer you can't refuse. What I'm going to do? He says, I'm going to pretend like it's me, but you'll go in there, and you'll have relations with him. So she says, like, let's switch, You will switch and be in my place. This is what she tells her. It was very nice of her, very, very generous to do that. But again, right, we come to the same problem, right? Ishai now is having relations with his wife, but he thinks it's his maidservant. So what does that mean? He's thinking about a different woman, right? Not the woman that he's actually with. So, okay. But it was what it was, right? It is what it is, as they say, right? So what happened, right? She actually went in, and she had relations, and he didn't know that it was his wife. He thought it was this young lady, right? So guess what? His wife gets pregnant from that intercourse. Lucky you, right? You got pregnant. Oh, good, right? So they say that Ishai, at that point, he already had 7 sons, at that point. So David was number 8. So what happened, right? That she got pregnant. Now, right? Look at this now. Listen to this. So she gets, all of a sudden, right? You can see on her stomach, she's pregnant, her belly's sticking out, Oh Lord, either she had like a very big meal, or she got pregnant, right? Problem is, she's not supposed to get pregnant because she's, Ishai is doing celibacy with her. You get the point? So what happens is, right, that Ishai thinks now his wife committed adultery, he doesn't realize that it came from him. Okay? You get my drift over here? So crazy story, right? True story. So what happens is, right, that so Ishai decided, not to divorce her, whatever, even though he thought that, she cheated on him. Whatever it was, right? I'm not going to get into that issue right now. But anyway, thing is, right? Guess who's born from that, right? David, right? Comes out David. Ah, Mazal Tov, right? David came out of this union, right? They say, so he's damaged also, right? David was also damaged. Why is that? Because Yishai was thinking about this maidservant. Actually, he was with his wife. So that's why David sinned also, they say, right? Why did David sin? Because this damage that got into him, like with this. That's why he sinned. You guys following me, or am I boring you? Am I boring you to death?
No.
Okay, I hope not.
That's very interesting.
Okay, right. So
I do have a question, Rabbi, and
yeah, of course, yeah, of course.
it might be totally wrong. I don't know. So you were talking about souls, right? Being born in the wrong place due to the thinking. Is it only souls created, or can other things be created, like angels, or what? I mean, we're talking about souls created in coming down to babies, but is it other things that are created if there's bad thoughts during those things, during relationships?
Angels are created, much easier than souls, because anytime a person does a sin, right, or a mitzvah, there's an angel created from that mitzvah that he did,
I see.
or the sin that he did. So angels are created like all the time. It's like nonstop.
So having relationships on Shabbat, it's a mitzvah.
Yes.
Do you all create angels?
No, we're not talking about angels. We're talking about you're bringing a good soul down to the world.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, right, here's the thing. So David sinned. Why? Also, he was damaged. So the thing is, right, they say both Reuven and David, they did teshuvah. They weren't totally eliminated, from the Jewish people. Why is that? Because it was by mistake, this whole thing. That's what it says in the Zohar, right? My Rabbi Shima, right, told me that. So I believe it, So, okay, good, right? So, okay, fine. So we see over here right now, I give you some very strong examples, right? How things can go really wrong when a person is thinking about the wrong person, during intercourse. So don't be one of these people, who likes to fantasize, it's about some other people while he's having relations with his own woman, Come on, what are you? By the way, the same thing also applies with the woman. You shouldn't be thinking about different men. Same problem, right? It's all the same. So you got to watch out with that. As we go along in this chapter, right, what we're going to see is that I forgot my train of thought. Anyway, I'll come back to that. So anyway, right, the point is that you got to be very careful with these kinds of things. You got to really. Oh yeah. Now I just remembered what I was going to tell you. We're going to see, right, that this is one of the 9 things that a person can do to greatly damage his offspring. This is one of the 9 things. There's 9 of them. We're going to go through all of them. So this is one of them. So this is like a deal breaker. You understand? If you do this on purpose, not accidentally, like Isha and Yaakov, we're not talking about that. That's also bad. But if a person does it on purpose, with intention, that child is going to turn out to be very bad. You got to watch out, So what does it say in the Zohar Kadosh about that? If a person has one of these 9 things that he does, right, during intercourse with his wife, guess what his children will come out to be? You want to take a guess? He gets a child which is from the Erev Rav, which are the worst sinners, This is what he gets. So what does that mean? That child is going to give him a very hard time. He's going to have a difficult life with him. It's going to be lots of anguish there, Lots of suffering. Right? That's the way it goes. Okay, I think we pretty much understand, right, what's going on with that. I think I explained it pretty decent. Okay. Oh, so the next one is exactly talking about what I just mentioned, right? So we'll just, recap this whole thing here, to Bet Yosef, and then we'll see the Shulchan Aruch here. So it says over here, right, in the tour, right? So it says there's also other bad thoughts that cause a person, right, to, as we said, right, to damage a child. There's 9 of them, right? This was one of the 9. So it says, right? So it says those are the 9, as we said, right? So we're going to go now, right, in the tour and see what they are, right, one by one. Itemize them, right? So let's go in there and see that. So says the tour, right? Who are these 9 people? One is Bnei Anusa, right? What does that mean? That you raped, the woman, right? Instead of having relations with her, with consent, you raped her, right? That's also causes a great deal of damage. You can understand why that is, right? Because when you rape the woman, you're causing her a trauma, in her mind. So that trauma is, it creates a tremendous hatred, right? The animosity there. So that damages the child. Right? The next one is if there's hatred between the husband and wife, right? They hate each other. So if they hate each other, they shouldn't have relations together. So what should they do? Kiss and make up, and then do it afterwards, right? But in the state of mind with hatred, don't do it. Very bad. causes a great deal of damage. So then he goes on, B'nai Nidui, right? So what does Nidui mean? It means a couple of things, but the simple meaning means that the husband was excommunicated or something like that, right? We talked about that already a couple of times. Right? I'm not going to get too much into that right now. Excommunicated. There's also another explanation we're going to get to later on. We'll talk about it later on. So he says, right, B'nai Temura, as we said, right, and one of them is also B'nai Temura, right? What does that mean? As we said, right, you're thinking about somebody else. You're thinking about a different woman. Or she's thinking about a different man, right? Same thing, it's all the same. And then we have B'nai Moredet, right? What does that mean? That the wife, tells the husband, listen, I don't want to be married to you, like I can't live with you anymore, right? And she still goes and has relations with her, What are you doing? That's no good. If she doesn't want to be married to you, she doesn't want you anymore, don't have relations with her. So another version of that is Nusach Achir, B'nai Meriva, also if they had a fight, They just had a fight between each other. So there's a lot of hostility there, you know what I mean? So when you're fighting, you shouldn't be, having relations. You understand obviously why that is, right? Hatred, animosity, right? All the stuff. Bearing a grudge, right? All kinds of things, It's a terrible state of mind. And then shichrut, right? Another one is drunkenness, right? So meaning what? Don't have relations with your wife when you're drunk, Right? So we're not talking about, he had one or two, glasses of wine. We're not talking about, we're talking like he's really sloshed, Heavy duty, right? Okay, next one, right? B'nai Grushat Alev, right? Also, there's another one, which is that the husband decided to divorce his wife. He still has relations with her, before he divorces her. You shouldn't do that. If you decide to divorce her, leave her alone, right? That's enough, right? Enough. Next one, B'nai Iruvia, right? B'nai Chatzufa. So then we have Chatzufa. So what does that mean? Chatzufa means that, she is in a state of disrespecting him, Chutzpah. Okay. Good. So now we went through the whole 9 things, right? So you see, right? They all have one thing in common. We're talking about a bad state of mind, in either one of the spouses or both of them. It's bad anyway, either way.
Couple to hop in the one for Nida. In which category did you?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
The offspring of Nida. Is this under this 9 category? No.
Yeah, so let's take a look at that, right? Which one is it? So right, so yeah, see when it says nidui, it also means nida. As I told you, right, it has 2 meanings.
Thank you, Kabbalah.
So it's covered over there.
Thank you.
Right? So meaning what, right? It's an important thing you mentioned. That, if a person has relations with his wife, right, when she's nida, and she didn't go to the mikveh yet, right, the children are going to turn out to be very, very problematic. So you got to watch out with that, right? I already posted a couple of things about that. Look at my posts and you'll see, right, what it says about that. How terrible it is, for the husband,
Rabbi,
for the wife, and for the child.
so this will be under that excommunicated, right?
Right, so because the word nidui, can be, it has like 2 different meanings.
Okay.
Nidui means excommunication, also means nida.
Okay. Me too.
You understand? It's like a double entendre there,
Okay.
It's a dual meaning.
Thank you.
There are words in Hebrew like that, they have like the different implications. Okay, very good. That's the story there. Okay, good. So, okay, we're good. So let's go now to Bet Yosef Shulchan Aruch and we'll see what it says, right? So he brings here the source, right, in Bet Yosef. Where's the source for this? It's in Nedarim, Chaf Amud Bet, over there. If you want to see this in the Gemara. Also, another thing, right? It says that a person, who rapes his wife, right? The same thing, right? But this is different Gemara. Where is this in? So it says the Bet Yosef, right? This is in Perek Hamotzet Tefillin, right? Which is in Shabbat. Kuf Amud Bet. Peresh Rashi. Rashi explains the Davar Mitzvah, right? Tashmish. So he rapes her, but basically forces her to have sex. So we already mentioned that, right? How that's also very harmful. So okay. So then he goes on with this list, right, that we mentioned. So it says Bet Yosef, Zerashon Ravad B'Shara Kedusha. This is what the Ravad says. והשנואה שאמרנו, שנואה מרוחקת בשעת התשמיש, הרי אמור לאה, שנואה הייתה מפני רחל. Oh, so he says, right, when we say that there's hatred, we're talking about at the time of the intercourse, So a person can rectify that just by, first making up, with your spouse and then having the relations. But don't do it during the time of hatred. That's how you fix the problem. So he says that's what happened with Leah. He says, right, because Leah, as it says in the pasuk in the verse, right, she was hated. Yaakov didn't really love her so much. Whatever, right? What can you do? That's the way it goes. But he says, so then how did Yaakov solve the problem with Leah? Right? So he says, even though he didn't really like her that much, but at the time of the intercourse, they would make up, and right first, and then they would have intercourse. Okay, well, there you go. There are, unfortunately, there are marriages like this, where there's a lot of dissonance going on, between the husband and wife. You know what I mean? They're like fighting like cats and dogs, sometimes, or all the time. Right? So if you have a marriage like that, you got to be careful, because when at the time of the intercourse, you got to be, chilled out. No hatred there, you shouldn't be feeling any hatred. If you do, right, it'll do damage. Okay, that's what the Ravad says, right? There you go. Okay, very good. So let's move on a little bit. So one of the ones that we mentioned, right, was what? That she has chutzpah, So now, right, the Torah comes and says, what does it mean that she has chutzpah? What are we talking about here? So they define it like this, that she like verbally propositions him, for sex. Verbally, straight out. That's called chutzpah. A woman is not supposed to talk like that. So the question is then, what is she supposed to do? In other words, if she's in the mood to be with her husband, right, what is she supposed to do? So therefore, right, it says the Torah, what she's supposed to do is, be subtle, like dress nice, dress up, put on some perfume, be a little bit romantic, but don't outright, tell your husband, okay, let's have sex, come on, or the other words that they use, right? I'm not going to get into the whole lexicon there, right? All these words they use. Come on, you could do a little better than that, right? You're a Jewish woman. You're not supposed to talk like that. So you got to be subtle, like a woman is supposed to be, Jewish woman. And don't talk directly like that. That's not the way to do it. But so if you do it in a subtle way, just with allusions, so then the children actually turn out to be very good, right? It says, right? Turn out to be wise, right? Wise children. How do we know that? From Leah, right? Because she went out to greet Yaakov And from that union, they had Issachar, who was a big rabbi, the big chacham. He was a big Torah guy, in the family, right? So why? Because she went, and she seduced him into it, in other words, but not directly, right? That's the thing. You don't say it directly. You can do more like, indirectly, that's the thing, right? There's all kinds of nice ways to say or do things like that. You don't have to be direct, especially using those, dirty words, You don't want to be talking like that. This is not the presidential debate, we don't talk like that. Okay. So, to each his own, right? Whatever. Right? So, okay, good. So he brings a source for this, right? In Bet Yosef, Pek Hamotzeh Tefillin, right? It's also there in Shabbat. Kufa Mudbet. Well, Pek Elu B'Toyin also, right? This Pek, right? So yeah, there you go, right? They're in Shabbat. Okay, beautiful, right? So what else we got here? Let's see what else we got. So, okay, so Bet Yosef here analyzes this a little bit, right? This whole discussion regarding, the 9 right things that we said damage a child. So he gets into a little bit of a analysis here about this, right? So what's the question? The question is like this. Kashi Ali, so it says, difficult for me. So he says, really, the main problem we have with this is when you're having children with your wife, right? Then those bad thoughts can cause damage to the children that come out of that union. That's what he's saying. That's what it says in Gemara. It says, Nadarim, Ubarotim ikam amodim b'pashim, Amar Rabbi Levi, Elu b'nei 9 midot, Ve'od b'chol 9 midot, Aminan b'nei kach u'v'kach, Amar de'ikar kfeda avanim, hu v'v'havya efshar shemipnei. So he says, right, you see from the Talmud that the main problem is the way the children turn out because of these things. But he says, nevertheless, right? De'ikar kfeda avanim, hu v'v'havya efshar shemipnei shelo hebi kan kara דוברותיי מכאן מודים ופושעים הבקסל כדתך והנה מידות לא מפסדי אלא ושכבר קיים מצוות קיים מצוות הפרי הרבייה אבל כשעדיין לא קיים אף על פי שהוא אנוסה או מורדת שפיר דמה כמה שמונן דלא שנה וטעמה משום תקרא דברותים מכאן ומודים ופושעים לא מפליג בין קיים מצוות פרי הרבייה או לא קיים. So okay, so right he gives you here one answer right to that question. So he says the truth is, we're only talking about when your wife is getting pregnant from you. That's when you have these problems, because of the way the child will come out. But otherwise, right, it implies from his words that it really shouldn't be a problem, it's only a problem when you can have children. Right? But of course, when it comes to nida, that's always a problem, no matter what, right? Because nida not only causes damage to the children, it causes also damage to you. So regarding that, you got a problem, right? That's not going to help you. Nothing will help you with that. When it comes to the other 8 things, so there, the problem is only when you're having children, right? That's what he's saying over here. Okay, so let's go on a little bit, right? So he says, אחר שכתבתי זה בא להדגיש שער הקדושה לרב"ד, כתוב בו כלשון הזה, כל אלה בני 9 מידות שאמרנו שאפילו יהיו צריכים לפי הרבייה, אשר אשתו מעוברת, והיא צריך לדבר, זה תלד עם דלת משחה בחטא, שהייתה נוסעה בשעת התשמיש, או שהיה בה אחת מכל המידות שהזכרנו, פוגם את הוולד ופוגם את עצמו, ושהוא נקרא מורד ופושע. Right. So interesting, right? That the Ravad here seems to say a different way, right? That was the first answer that I gave you. But here, right now, he found the book of the Ravad afterwards, and the Ravad seems to say not only causes damage to his children, also causes damage to him as well. So that's interesting. נראה שהוא ז"ל מפרש, תחד יאמין הנברוטים לקם במורדים פרושים, באלו בני 9 מידות, כלומר, אנשי 9 מידות, כלומר, שבעולם מאחד 9 מידות אלו הם מורדים פושעים, וכן בדין שהבלד אחד מ9 מידות אלו, למה בשם מבטן קורא כולו, על פשע אביו, חטאתו, והוא נקי כפיים, אם לא שנאמר שכל שהוראתו ואחד מאלה סופו להיות מורד פושע. Okay, so in other words, it seems to me that he's trying to say in the name of the Rabbi that it also causes damage to the father as well, not only the children. These things. So then he goes on, right? There's also other things, as we said, right? That damage to children, but they're not as heavy, right? We're going to get into that, I guess, next time, right? We don't have much time now, so we can see that next time. Okay, so very good. So Bezrat Hashem, we'll continue, right, this tour and Bet Yosef. There's one more piece here next time, and then we'll do Shulchan Aruch, and we'll go on from there. Okay, so anyway, right, thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Bezrat Hashem, as you can see, right, we're learning some deep things over here, so it's very worthwhile to hear, to hear these lectures. All right, so Bezrat Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch.
Thank you, Rabbi. Laila
God
tov.
bless. All the best.
Kabbalah, thank you so much.
God bless.